What's going on, everybody? Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and whatever time it is, and welcome back to another video with your man, Majorholic. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my Rise of the Julia campaign for Total War Rome 2, Divided Impera, episode 15. Today we are starting part 1 of the Numidian Wars. This episode and the following one are going to be specifically about the Numidian Wars, or what I am dubbing as the Numidian War in North Africa. And that basically entails us fighting against the few Carthaginian forces left in North Africa, and more importantly, the Masali and the Masili factions, who are both Numidian, hence why I'm dubbing this the Numidian Wars. Now, the thing about this episode, and probably at least most of the next one, I'm going to be fast forwarding through a lot of what happens. That's because if I don't, we're going to be spending 5+ episodes just in North Africa alone, and while that might be interesting to some people, to me it isn't really that interesting. There are some great battles, don't get me wrong, and I will be showing them to you every now and then, but for the most part, most battles aren't really worthy of mentioning. Quite often we just steamroll over an enemy army fairly easily. We take a few casualties, a couple hundred, and then I just have to pull back my army and recover from our very few losses that we do get. But that's in general. There are some exceptions, and there's some great battles, and not every battle is going to be an easy win, and you guys will see that moving forward. But as you can see here, even two armies coming at us, coming against the First Legion here outside Capsa, they were no match for the First Legion, and now we're actually going to be assaulting Capsa itself, which again is going to be no match. Even though the balance of power is very much against us, the reality is very, very different on the battlefield, and here you can see exactly why our ballista pound the city, getting us some nice entryways into the city itself. And then when we do finally get in, our troops are just going to really outclass the enemy. They have no generals, so the enemy's going to rout fairly easily once we start outflanking them. You can see in this particular clip I'm using my auxiliaries to march through the walls and take them out. And while that's all happening, I have my Principes going in through another entry in the wall that the enemy only lightly defended, and we're just going to be basically dissecting the enemy is a really good way of describing it, and that's going to be happening in the future town sieges that we have coming up, as well as the battles, where we just pick apart the enemy one unit by one unit until eventually they all rout, and that's what happens in this battle and in many others to come, hence why I'm just flying through this. Now I know some of you might think, hang on, this could have been cool, the city is really nice, could have been fun to look at, and while that is true, there will be many more city battles to come, much better ones, and like I said, we really just need to get through this. I'm kind of surprised I'm still so far behind in the campaign. But anyway, we take Capsa and I liberate it, creating the Masili Confederation. However, they instantly break the alliance with us, so that is a very scary thing to think of when we're liberating people. Apparently they can have the power to be treacherous, just as the new Masili Confederation does, and they just broke off ties instantly, so that's going to be something I'm going to have to deal with. Up here though in the north, I did want to show you guys a few times what's happening with the Adrician Kingdom. They ended up destroying the Veneti Confederation, who were our allies, and they're just going to be dominating Cisalpine Gaul the next few turns, and we'll go back up and see that later. Here's another battle. The First Legion moved back towards Carthage and joined up with the Third Legion, and both legions are combining to take on the two Masali forces sitting up here on the coast. They weren't really doing anything. I expected them to attack Carthage. If you'll remember last episode, we had 15,000 Numidians sitting outside the city, but they never attacked. So we get a good decisive victory. The Greek units under the Third Legion took a lot of casualties, so I'm going to be replacing them, hopefully with better Libyan troops, but we'll see just how good those Libyans are very soon. Again, just showing you what's happening with the Adricians up here in the north. They actually liberated an old ally of ours, the Insubre Confederation, and then instantly the Insubres broke away from their alliance and just attacked them. So basically Cisalpine Gaul and Illyria are a little bit chaotic at the moment. It is something that we're going to have to deal with moving forward, but right now we're just focusing on Carthage. However, I did want to show you guys that our family tree is currently in a bit of a crisis. Our new leader, Sura, only has an illegitimate child, and we've just lost the last children of our previous leader, the Julia family, Lucius, so that's not very good. I did get some marriages arranged for the other leaders of the other families. That's mainly just to keep them loyal. We've lost a couple generals over the last few battles, and so I just wanted to try and boost their loyalty just a little bit, and getting them married does help, certainly. Here we have the 1st Legion going up against another Numidian army, coming up against them on the northern coast here, just outside of Carthage. Again, the balance of power is against us, but it's just another easy win. The Principes are almost like legionnaires right now, and to those of you who have played Rome before, which is probably everyone, legionnaires are insane, and Principes are really not that far behind. They're really excellent, and so they win us today very decisively. The 1st Legion retreated back to Carthage and regrouped, and is now marching on Thapsos. Thapsos was an ally of ours after we liberated them, however they ended up falling to the Massili. For whatever reason they just refused to build armies, so they fell to the Massili very easily, and so I decided to assault the city myself and just get the job done, because I was kind of sick of being stuck in Carthage. A lot of turns happened here. We're around turn 130, 140 around this time in the campaign, and so I'm really starting to get sick of just being stuck in Carthage now that we have owned it for about 20 or so turns. So now I'm just trying to really get things done, and if I have to occupy towns that I would prefer not to, then I'll just have to do it. Again, just a few clips here of you guys seeing how we're assaulting the towns. We bombard the enemy with our archers and our ballista, especially the ballista. Then we move in, we just dissect the enemy again. It does look like a bit of a clusterfuck here. The Principe is just clashing against the enemy, but we do have units flanking in the town. And then you can see here, when the enemy does rout, we just instantly can take advantage of the holes in their line. And that's because the Principes, despite being really well armored, are really mobile. It's really insane how good they are. I really can't emphasize that enough, and we're going to be seeing that going forward. So that was really nice. We occupy Thapsos. We don't liberate it again. I'm not going to bother. Definitely not going to loot it, as public order is a really big issue at the moment in North Africa, unsurprisingly. Here we have another interesting development. Massalia loses their trade agreement with us, which is a really big deal, actually. We lost quite a few grand from that. And that's because the Adricians are once again causing chaos in Cisalpine Gaul. They are here. They just took the capital of Massalia. Massalians do have a few more cities up in Gaul itself. They're very spread out, so they're not by any means about to be vanquished, but we did lose trade with them, and it just shows that Massalia is definitely on the back foot. They are still at war with Carthage, but they're obviously not getting anything done, especially with the Adricians coming in. We're definitely going to have to go to war with the Adricians very soon. Now here during the enter we get a very interesting development. Carthage launches a surprise raid on Thapsos, the town we just captured, and the town that no longer has a garrison after we obliterated it, and of course we haven't had time to recover, so we're going to lose it instantly. However, it's not a big deal. The 3rd Legion will come back in the very next turn and take the town and crush the enemy navy. Which of course is very excellent, as now the navy cannot raid our coastline or our trade in the region, which is always nice. It does actually affect your economy quite heavily when enemy navies are doing that. Anyway, moving forward here, we now come with a deadly strike against the Massili. Sorry. I'm sorry, I do get them conflicted quite a bit. But anyway, we are attacking their capital, which is actually a very large economical power among the many cities that they have. For whatever reason, even though it's just a small little town, it actually did produce for them a lot of money. We are going to liberate the town rather than sack or raise or anything else. I'm just trying to get a buffer between me and Carthage to the west, as I don't want to be going west. I want to be securing from Carthage to Egypt, basically. So we're going to be focusing on moving southeast, hence why I created that ally. However, during the end turn, my previous ally who has already betrayed us, the Massili Confederation, who own Capsa, the large capital city in the desert down there in the south, are attacking our new allies that we just created, which is very bad. And what's even worse is that they have 2 full stack armies just sitting outside Carthage like it's nothing. I was really annoyed when this happened. I couldn't believe it. They do have the treacherous trait in the diplomacy tab when you're looking at a certain faction, and it tells you if they're aggressive or defensive and if they're reliable or not. It does say that it's treacherous, so I guess this is why they're going to be little pricks. But anyway, that's just something we're going to have to deal with, and it's something we have to deal with right now. The 1st Legion is already on its way to Capsa, which is nice, but it means the 3rd Legion is stuck on its own at Carthage. So what I'm going to do is recruit a couple mercenaries and then come back at the 2 Massili armies along the coastline here. And even though the balance of power was really against us, I still had to give it a try in defense of Carthage. And here we are. We're actually going to showcase this battle, as this is a very interesting battle. We have a very subpar Roman army. You can hardly even call it Roman, to be honest. Going up against 2 full stacks of Numidians. This is going to be a really hard battle. I begin by trying to rush the enemy army that's facing us on the battlefield first. I didn't know where the enemy would be reinforcing from. I didn't really pay attention too much on the campaign map. I kind of thought it would be from behind me, but I wasn't too sure. So my main strategy was just rush on the flanks with my cavalry and then rush up the center with my main line. The cavalry did great. They routed the enemy archers very quickly, which is awesome. However, my main line was a little slow, and here you see the massive blunder that I've basically created, and that is behind me over my right hand shoulder. The enemy army is already engaging us before we can even engage the 1st army. They are reinforcing from behind, and they're just rushing in. They're really not wasting time. They realize that they have strength in numbers, and so even though their troops will be tired when they engage us, which will be to our advantage, they're still just rushing forward, and it doesn't matter how tired they are. The numbers are going to play a massive role in this battle. I still continue with my plan though. I try and assault the 1st army that we were up against. I did divert some troops against the reinforcing army just to provide a holding action. We just need to delay them long enough for me to rout the 1st main army, and we start doing that slowly. Particularly by using my cavalry. I tried to outflank the enemy. The Numidians are really low in discipline and morale, and so if you want the enemy to rout quickly when you're fighting these types of factions, you need to outflank them and really hit their morale. Here we can see my small little line that's trying to stop the enemy reinforcements lining up with my velites and a few swordsmen. The enemy was bombarding my troops of skirmishers, which is going to be a really big killer going up against these types of factions. They just love to bombard you with their skirmishers, and they have a lot of them, and they're very cheap and they're very hard to spot. You'll realize when I looked behind me and saw the enemy army reinforcing, they had only just appeared into our line of sight, and that's where the new divided Impera changes in the latest update. The line of sight for the player in battles is dramatically reduced, and for the AI, I believe. But yeah, I just didn't see them coming, and we're paying for that now. Perhaps I could have just stayed back and sat on the hill, and we would have done a lot better, but we are the ones attacking. Here we are skipping ahead, and the main battle is really getting along now. The enemy reinforcements have pretty much entirely joined. I've got a lot of the enemy's 1st army routed already, which is excellent. However, their general just isn't dying. You can see I have him out here sort of surrounded, at least isolated, with 1 unit of cavalry and one of my swordsman units engaging him. However, he was engaged for a really long time and he just wasn't dying. It was really frustrating and it was really hard to deal with. You can see some of his troops are wavering, and if we could just get that kill, that might be enough to knock at least his army out of the picture. If you look on the bottom though, you'll see my troops are routing and they are dying at the same time. My troops just don't have the good Roman quality that we're used to having. Here we skip ahead again, even though at this point the enemy general had routed and a lot of the enemy army is wavering. We get a massive rout actually across the last of that 1st army that we engaged. However, it's just not going to be good enough. Even though there's massive wavering going on, I can see all that flashing going on in the background. It's just not good enough. My troops are so depleted, they're so tired, They're so broken up and disorganized. They just really don't have the strength and the endurance to keep going. If they did, if these were Principes, then I would be fairly comfortable in finishing this off. However, with the insane amount of units that we've lost, enemy troops coming back from routing as well, you can see a couple spearmen off behind my general now, back to the left there. It's just going horribly, and we're just not going to win this. I was really stubborn. I probably should have retreated by now, as we are using the leader of the junior faction in this battle. And there you go. He has just died. The leader of the junior faction has just fallen, and that is going to be a massive blow to the balance of power in the Roman Senate. That's really not going to be a good thing for us. Even though he is the leader of a rival faction, it's going to cause a lot of chaos in the Senate, and with that, we lose the battle. Here are the statistics. If you want to have a look at them, feel free. You can see where we lacked. My skirmishers did really poorly considering how I set them up. Cavalry did excellent. They were really good cav. The dogs did terrible. My main battle line did okay, but the Libyan troops were pathetic. They routed so easily, and they just weren't getting kills. And with that, we lose the leader of the junior faction and almost the entire 3rd Legion, but not all of it. Immediately after, though, the enemy armies start engaging Thapsos, which has my full navy sitting just outside the docks. And with that, we're actually going to be able to auto-resolve and defend Thapsos. This might seem a little weird and maybe even a little bit buggy. I'm not sure why we had such a good auto-resolve in our favor. However, I just took it. We had to take it. We can't really afford to keep not making progress, not really moving forward. We have to move forward however it is, and auto-resolve was in my favor, and that's that. We win the battle, we annihilate a lot of their troops, and those two armies basically become nullified from that. And with that, we now attack Capsa once again, just a few turns after we've already assaulted it. The enemy does have a large garrison, however, we have the 1st Legion led by Nia Sulla, our Julia faction leader. Sura, sorry, not Sulla. And he just annihilates the garrison. They did very, very little damage against us. They did do a bit of damage to one of our cavalry units, but it doesn't matter. Cavalry is very expendable at the moment. We can just recruit mercenaries like it's nothing, and auxiliaries from Carthage itself, which is excellent. And then the next turn I hire some more mercenaries in the 3rd Legion after they recover and recruit some cav. And we run down the last of the Massilia Confederation. Now that that's been dealt with, however, there is the issue of what we're going to do with Capsa. Capsa is a city in its own province. That means that we have no other towns in that province under our control just yet. And the only possible influence we have is our one ally, who has a small village up in the mountains above Carthage, and that village is a part of the Capsa region. But I am going to occupy Capsa. We do hold it, and even though it is going to be a pain in the butt trying to control it with all the severe public order issues we have, as you can see here, I'm quelling a rebellion that Carthage itself is suffering. Well, Thapsos at the moment, but Thapsos and Carthage did have a lot of rebellions. Nearly every second turn we had rebels going up who were very angry about our occupation. And dealing with Capsa is going to be particularly difficult because we don't have any characters to spare over there. I can't send any governors at the moment. We don't really have many. We have 3, I believe, is the maximum at this point in time, and they're all in specific areas where I need them. The 1st Legion is there, but the 1st Legion is my Juggernaut Legion. I need to be sending them around to conquer more towns. Here we can see the damage that losing the junior faction leader caused. They have really disloyal to us now, and honestly they were probably not far from being on the brink of having a risk at least of civil war. However, I do try and get the characters to do some missions. Just having them do any kind of mission, as long as they don't get hurt or die from it, it's generally going to improve their loyalty towards you. And one really good option is to have them organize games which improve the public order of a province that you send them to. So I'm going to do that for the next few turns, try and improve their loyalty once again. However, they were really one of our biggest supporters, which is funny because they were one of our biggest rivals. and now they really hate us, and so that's going to take a while for us to recover from that. However, that is where we're going to end part 1 of the Numidian Wars. Part 2 will continue soon this week. Apologies for the late upload on this video. Last week has been very busy for me. But we will continue. We'll continue conquering Africa, assuming we can, as long as Carthage doesn't throw any curveballs at us. And then hopefully we'll be dealing with Carthage in Iberia. But anyway, thank you all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you in the next one.